Hi everyone, my name is Grassi. I'm a MSK physiotherapist at Iceberg Hospital in Wellingborough. And for this well-being talk, I'm going to focus on common musculoskeletal problems associated with working from home. We'll also look at common complaints we've observed in clinic post-lockdown periods and briefly discuss ways you can help yourself manage these complaints. So this presentation will be titled Pandemic Pain. The main areas of the body that can be affected as a result of working from home or adopting a more office-based work is the spine. So we often see patients presenting with lower back pain, upper back or thoracic pain, neck pain, as well as cervicogenic headaches. We also see patients presenting with shoulder complaints as a result of that. There are various factors that can contribute to these aches and pain, and one of which is the fact that working in an office type of job, the body is having to spend prolonged period of time in the same setup or a more static position. So our body is designed to move on a regular basis, and when we find ourselves in one position for too long, a number of things can happen which can result in pain. For example, there can be reduced circulation into your muscles, leading up to a more ischemic effect in those tissues and resulting in pain. General stiffness for spending a lot of time in one position, and that can result in pain. And you've got different sets of muscles, different types. So some that are more adapted to stay in one position for too long, and your major powerful muscles which don't cope too well with spending a prolonged period of time in one position, and therefore they can fatigue quicker and cause pain. So there are several factors that can contribute to that. And so the focus of this talk will be more about spending more time in static positions and how can we manage or avoid that. So when we talk about postural management, often we will think about, when we think about posture, we think about what is the best way to sit, how should I set myself up, etc. And from what we understand is that there isn't an ideal posture. So the body is designed to be quite flexible, and the best and most effective way to manage, if not to prevent, the body going into that vicious cycle of triggering aches and pain in those parts of the body is we simply have to move on a regular basis. And I often advise my patient to say, okay, avoid being in one position or being sat down for more than 30 minutes. The more frequent the better in that sense, because you allow your body to relax and breathe, you allow good blood flow to those muscles and tissues, and therefore reduce the likelihood of developing aches and pains, if not prevent. You don't get as stiff as a result. As simple as that. So that's when it comes to postural management and working from home. That will be, if there was one take home, will be simply move as regular or as often as you can. If we had that as number one, we can also look at how work surfaces are set up at home. So although we say that there isn't an ideal posture, but we also want to make sure that the body is in a way that we are a little bit more relaxed. So we're not having to, the muscles are not having to work too hard. And a good setup in terms of having a table or your work desk adjusted high enough so that your eyes are level with the computer screen that you're working from, so you're not having to look down, you're not having to look up. As you can imagine, that would cause a bit of strain in the neck. Having a chair where you feel like your body is nice and relaxed. So at the end of this talk, or some of the materials that I can send some information on how to set up your work surface. That's not a problem. That also contributes. And so they will be the key aspect of managing some of the common complaints associated with working from home. And the third one for me will be developing good working habits from home. So with working from home, there's every temptation to, instead of setting yourself in an office setup, there's every temptation to work in bed. There can be temptation to work on your sofa, and so on. Again, up to a point, the body can tolerate spending a little bit of time on a computer in bed or on the chair, but those positions are not efficient, so the body is not relaxed enough, and it would increase the likelihood of developing aches and pain. And the best thing to do is simply be disciplined and have a working space that you commit to on a regular basis, to avoid sort of falling into that temptation of, okay, let me just work anywhere and anywhere. So there will be the main focus. Sounds very simple, but as far as what we'll class posture related pain, there will be some of the key things that you can do whilst you're at home to ensure that your body doesn't develop these aches and pains or stiffness. Also, overall, is really important for anyone really who does a fairly sedentary job to be physically active. And I will always encourage my patients to do some aerobic activities to counteract those static postures. So that can be range from anything from going out for regular walks during your lunchtime or your break time, going out for walks in the evening after work, because what that does is it counteracts the position that you spend most of the time. It gets your body into a more relaxed position. There's good circulation and blood flow into your muscles, your joints, and that can prevent developing stiffness, aches and pain. And also, walking or doing any aerobic activities can be quite relaxing and from a stress point of view, and these are the factors that can contribute to aches and pain. The second part of this talk will focus on aches and pains that we've noticed post-lockdown periods, and often patient will present with tendon-related pain, typically the hips, so lateral, so pain around the side of the hips, and they can present with pain around sort of the buttocks, knee pain, pain around the back of their heels, or Achilles pain, and a lot of these pain have two things in common in a way. So in recent years, we've gone from being significantly reducing some of the activities that we do, as we talked about, having to work from home, not necessarily doing some of the physical activities that we used to do, in some cases pre-lockdown, and as a result the body and the musculoskeletal system can decondition. So in terms of losing strength in your muscles, losing your general stamina or your aerobic fitness, and as a result of that, when we go back into doing a little bit more activities or becoming a bit more active again, your body's not quite conditioned to cope with the same amounts that it could do before. And that's been one of the major factors for some of those tendon related pain that I've mentioned, or other joints pain, for example, your knee pain, etc. And also a key contributing factor during lockdown is we noticed that a number of us have maybe put on a little bit more weight than we were before, and weight gains comes with it a lot of structural changes in the body, as well as being a little bit more heavier. The fact that we're carrying a little bit more adipose tissues has an influence on our overall body compositions. So your body's base we've got a combination of lean muscle fibers and fat to some degree, and so if there's an increase in fatty tissues, it can have a negative effects on your muscles, and therefore your musculoskeletal system is not as efficient or as strong as it was, or as conditioned pre-lockdown periods. And as a result, that might mean even at the certain level of activities or that you were doing before, if you try to do it again, your body will not respond in the same way. Or sometimes because of the overall deconditioning, your body will gradually be able to cope with less and less and less. I.e., I could walk 1 hour easily before, and now I only walk 30 minutes, and my body's already complaining in terms of aches and pain, or just not having the stamina to complete the task. And that's been one of the main driving factor for various complaints that we noticed, we'll say, post-lockdown periods. And how do we manage those aches and pains? So I'll look at it in two ways. For those that haven't quite, who are aiming to increase their physical activity or trying to do a little bit more, your body wants to gradually build up to anything you're going to put it through. So in other words, if I want to pick up walking and I haven't walked for a prolonged period of time, instead of going for a 10k walk straight away, I might just build up I might start with a gentle walk, whether it's 20 minutes, half an hour, and just to gauge what your body can cope and tolerate with. And the amounts that you start with is fairly subjective. Obviously, it's depending on the person's general fitness, general stamina, general conditioning, and but it becomes a little bit more of a trial and error. On an individual basis, it's easier to sit with the person and have an idea of what they were doing before and talk to them about how they can start to gradually build up their activity or whatever they intend to do. and that way your body has a chance to cope with the new challenge or the new demand, and it is able to adapt, and is also able to recover during those activities without necessarily flaring up certain structures. And if I use walking as a guide, or running, you'll often see that there's a good one to look at for your walkers will be couch to 5K walk. You can see how, if you follow the structure of the program, you can see how it gives you an idea of how to gradually build up anything you do. And again, that becomes a bit more subjective based on your current level of fitness, and it becomes a bit more of a trial and error to say, okay, I can have a go with 30-minute walk, see how my body responds, and if I cope and recover fairly well from it or not, that will dictate what we do next, whether we can stay at this pace, duration and distance for a brief period of time, or whether we need to scale it down. It'll all be dependent on how your body is able to cope with those such activities, or your body is able to, more importantly, recover from it. That's one aspect. The second part is more focusing on individuals that already have those aches and pains. So joint pains, for example, knee pain, because we've gone back into doing various activities again, or Achilles pain, hips, and the various structures. Obviously that I've mainly focused on the lower limb there, but it could be, this rule can apply to any parts of the body that's been irritated as a result of trying to do a little bit more. So some people would have returned to fitness classes potentially, and some people would have returned to swimming, some people could return to the gym or whatever it may be, or just the fact that there's a change in their setup, not working from home so much, having to go to work again if they walk to work, so that the change doesn't have to be like a specific fitness related activity. It could be as simple as you're just doing a little bit more than you have been doing in recent years, and your body's tissues and joints haven't quite coped with it. And how do we manage that? Firstly, I always advise my patient that stopping whatever activity that was causing the pain, or complete rest from every other activities, is not the answer, because if we go from, it's the extremes that we don't want to do. So we don't want to go from 0 to 100 where we've not doing any activities and then trying to do a lot more straight away, and equally we don't want to go from doing something and completely stopping, because that would not necessarily resolve the issue, especially if it's an activity that you want to continue doing. So often when we develop those aches and pain, what your body is telling you is that I'm just not coping with the demands that you're putting me through, and with a few tweaks in that particular activity, we can still be active but not irritate that part of the body or that joint or those structures. So if I stick with walking because it's fairly simple, somebody presents with knee pain because when I walk for 1 hour I'm in agony, I struggle for the rest of the day, etc. A sensible thing to do will be, okay, let's scale it right back down. Potentially if somebody works with numbers, we can get them to score their pain. and scale it to a point where, okay, we say what happens if we do 20 minutes, and that will be dictated on how much pain the individual is in that case. So if we scale it back to 20 minutes, how does your body respond? Okay, I can do it with few niggles, nothing to scream about, and my body can recover from it. We will scale it down until we find a reasonable pace or distance or duration of the activity, and an intensity that your body can cope with and recover from. So it's very much train or do the activity, but your body needs to be able to recover. And if there is a mismatch and the pain is a little bit more significant and we're unable to recover, that's where we have that conversation about load management. I think it becomes, if you apply that principle, it can help to manage a lot of those complaints. And that's more of a general view of how to manage, let's call it post-lockdown related pain or aches and pains and complaints as a result of trying to do a little bit more and your body just not quite being up for it or coping and being quite reactive to whatever new challenge that you put it through. Because avoidance, inactivity is not the answer. It doesn't resolve anything, and if anything, it makes things potentially worse, because you build up your activity, you stop, and then you try to do it again, your body will not cope with it until there's a way to kind of scale things back up. I think that's more of a general way of managing those complaints. And on top of that, so at the end of this talk, I'll go through some exercise ideas that you can do to help muscles and structures around those key body parts really that can get irritated as a result of the change that we've gone through from being fairly sedentary during the lockdown phase to trying to do a little bit more. And yeah, it's difficult to be quite specific, because I'm taking into consideration there's different parts of the body that can be affected in that sense. So the exercise plan or the rehab plan would focus on key muscle groups that can help or prevent those aches and pain. Yeah, so that's kind of the main part. So we discussed lockdown related aches and pains, and we had some ideas how to manage that. And also we've discussed post-lockdown related aches and pain, and just an overview on how or why the body can develop those aches and pain, and a way to manage going forward. And if there's one last message on that, it will be generally pain itself in those instances isn't telling you this, how should I word it, kind of have to rethink, okay, because I'm trying to be a little bit more general. So often your body experiencing pain during those changes or increase of activity doesn't mean we are causing more harm to those tissues or to your joints, to your muscles, to your tendons, etc. And all that it tells you is the body's, your musculoskeletal system just isn't coping with the volume or the demand that is being put through. And that's very important, because sometimes with pain post activities, we're tempted to think, okay, am I am I doing something wrong to these structures, and then that puts us off to continue doing them. So yeah, so that's very important, because at least if we have an understanding that the body is just not managing or not coping, but the activities itself is not the problem, but there is a way to help the body build into that. That will be very important. So if that was one last point, yeah. So hope it makes sense, everything we've kind of discussed, and yeah, so we will have attached some exercise ideas, like I said earlier, and yeah, so but if you were still having persistent issues with your joints and muscles and tendons, etc., then I would advise to get yourself referred to the physio. At least you can have a more in-depth assessment and a bit more tailored advice to your complaints. Thank you very much, and I enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.